Welcome to For the Record, which is a conversation series where we talk to music heads of all types about their stories and the music that makes them. Um, and excited to be speaking with you, Brodie, today. To begin, would love to just get a sense of you, your background, your story, when your relationship with music started, things like that.
Sweet. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I've been loving shouts to you and the whole Crate Coalition crew. Have been really loving these sessions already. So
Awesome. Happy
happy to be here. Yeah, my relationship with music is kind of a lifelong love. Sort of like despite the fact that my family's not super musical, like they listened to music, but it was pretty straightforward classic rock stuff, that greatest hits Eagles album sort of thing. A lot of Phil Collins.
yeah. That's right. Similar musical upbringings in our house, I think.
Yeah, like I didn't play an instrument until high school, really, or like a rock band instrument, really, and then like musical school stuff. But always loved music as a listener, and just was captivated by it, and it was a core part of my life, and growing up, that became more and more so, especially through the end of middle school, high school. Like it really became an identity thing. This was at like early 2000s, so very much the time of emo, screamo. I was in the early 2000s an avid Warped Tour, goer, like a skate punk, like Fat Records, No Effects, sort of guy. And then in high school, really grew into playing in bands and found my own musical performance identity, that I carried on through to college, university, and in Canada here, really like the indie rock sort of renaissance was where it was at around that time in the mid 2000s. The big Broken Social Scenes of the world, and like the sort of post-punk scene, like the Godspeeds, the Constellation Records of Montreal and stuff like that. And then found my way into first performing in an indie rock touring band for several years while I was in Ottawa, working for the government and going on tour all the time. And had that dream that I think a lot of us probably have had at some point, that you're gonna peek through, but at the same time then moved out of just performing and listening to music and into working in music. So I worked for several years for this company called Celt Management in Ottawa. We managed a few Canadian artists, Andy Shauf, Lido Pimienta, Adalea are some notable ones under our roster. And at the same time, I also was very involved in the local music community here in Ottawa. So we ran a not-for-profit called MEGAPHONO, where in Canada we have all this great grant money for music, which was fantastic, and we get all this grant money and fly in music industry people from around the world in the middle of winter to Ottawa to see, like, we'd program a ton of local bands at venues around the city, local and regional bands, with the idea of like helping them export, helping them be seen, and we'd run a conference with it. So like a lot of community building around music as well, which really goes with my music being core to my identity as a human being, and how I sort of navigate through the world. And then more recently, in the last couple of years, I've gotten deep into the research game, working at Water and Music, working on music and tech research, exploring Web3, all it has to offer for music, AI, mixed reality, and metaverse stuff. And then now I've landed also. I still do some work for Water Music on contract, and now I work at a place called the Center for Music Ecosystems, where We're exploring, the good that music brings to society, to communities, to cities, and that value from sort of a like output lens of what it does in the social, cultural, and economic worlds, and then using that to inform sort of policy recommendations, advise communities, music companies, and whatnot on how to increase that impact. So really, like, to sum it up, I'd say at my core that I love listening to music and engaging with it. Like, I've worked in it, I've played it, but I Create Coalition's so great for me because I really just love talking about and sharing music, and finding like-minded people who love to do that. I think sometimes I talk about this in the music industry, when we're thinking about how to market music, for instance. There's this bias among people maybe in the industry who are lovers of music itself, really, to think of everyone as like lovers of songs and the music, whereas there's obviously a lot more. Like, a lot of people are invested in the stories and the context around artists. Maybe you could call it the brand more so than the music at sometimes. And I think that's like a marketing question somewhat, but I often suffer from this bias of thinking everyone just flipping loves listening to music and will want to get down with me talking about the way a snare drum hits in a song, or the lyrics of a song, or whatnot.
Yeah, totally. First, yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing, your background. It's really interesting. You've been able to look at music through a lot of different lenses, over the course of your life. And I'm glad that you are a fellow music head who likes to, talk music. I follow, I think I also have what may be a misconception in that, not everybody loves music as much as I do, even though sometimes, I think that that's just how can you not? Um, but yeah, so I think a place like this is important for the people who truly, are the music nerds in the world. But also, it's been feeling increasingly important in uh, this work across the industry, getting into that side of things, understanding how the industry works, and talking about the marketing side and brand building. It how much it feels like the music itself is abstracted from the conversation, um, and it becomes all about the brand and all about the monetization and the scale of how big you can grow something, and quickly you forget what you're even talking about. This is music. That's why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty crazy.
Often in meetings when I was in management, or not often, the people we worked with generally were music heads, but I would get the most bummed out when we'd have a meeting about an album that was coming out or whatnot, and at no point did anyone acknowledge this thing we're releasing is a piece of art that
Yeah.
is incredible, and there's all these incredible moments on it. And I understand, it wasn't that these people didn't love music. It was that their job was to do this thing, and we were having a meeting about that. But I just always wanted that acknowledgement of this thing is it's amazing. It came out of thin air, and now it brings deep meaning to us, and will bring deep meaning to the world.
Yeah, true. I mean, yeah, as much as we can create space for that type of acknowledgement, I think the better the world will be. And in that vein, the work that you're doing um, right now in trying to evidence the, the cultural, sort of inherent value of music in society. It sounds fascinating. I want to come back to that, but first I want to go back a little bit to the early days, the Warp Tour days, and I would love to hear who are three, when you think about those days and you're music listening at the time, who are three artists that immediately come to mind, and then I would love to hear a little bit more about the band that you played and what it was called, what instrument you played, and kind of what the style
Cool.
was, if you could say a little bit about
Yeah,
that.
I mean, three early sort of when I was into the Warped Tour days artists are like NoFX was the artist. I think The Decline, which is if folks don't know this, like basically like 19-minute masterpiece song, like one long punk rock song that dives into lyrically dives into plenty of different social issues, and it's sort of this big old manifesto. Some of NoFX's songs can be cheesy and a little fromagey, but The Decline was just this perfect jam for me. I think a lot of those other Fat Wreck bands, like Lagwagon, especially, and then I would say in that era too was like a little more of the screamo was creeping in too. Like a band like Thursday, I was pretty deep into Thursday. Jeff Rickley, who is the lead singer of Thursday, and Thursday's still around and amazing. And like very like in that like sort of post-hardcore world, even like kind of like literary post-hardcore sort of world. Maybe I throw in one more, Cursive. Like I was into the Saddle Creek at the time too, the Bright Eyes of the world, and Cursive was this sort of like I don't know, art rock, I'd call them. That they're up there. In terms of the band I performed in, we were called Future States. It was sort of this indie rock, indie pop, like psych pop, maybe you'd call it, band, which was a little later than than those days. This is like sort of more in the 2010s era. But yeah, it was based out of Montreal. All my bandmates were in Montreal, and I'd ride the bus. I'd ride the Greyhound every weekend or every second weekend up to write and record. And it was kind of this group project where we all worked together to write the songs. Very, based in writing pop melodies while kind of trying to make the instrumentals a little more abstract, maybe experimental, like psychedelic at that time. But it was a real great learning experience of what it means to try and be an emerging artist in the music industry, and self-managing and self-releasing. And we worked with a small label called Golden Brown from the west coast of the US for a bit. But it was doing all the things. We got a sync, opportunity at one point, and we signed this record contract. So I learned about like master royalties and composition royalties, and then it was also just a ton of creative enjoyment writing together. We self-recorded for the most part. We used to go up to I'm originally from this town in northern Ontario, this city called Timmins. It's a mining town, and so we had a connection at a church there, and it's kind of like churches attendance is down these days, and so this minister just like gave us the keys and was like, I'll be back in a week, dude, like set yourself up. So we'd record there, and then getting visas, we'd tour the US Northeast and a lot of Canada, so like learning about what it's like on the road, and I think that makes me appreciate, related to the Web3 stuff, people trying to build digital communities, online communities, and I think I see that. And then I also though have a part of me that always says, cool, you've attained some growth here, now you have to see the other side a bit, like go hit the road, play for people. You haven't lived until you've played in St. John, New Brunswick to two people. But that is the way to like engage fans and audiences, and for artists to grow, and also figure out, like, I think people think performing live sometimes is like, my studio stuff sounds great, I made it by overdubbing tracks on a computer, it should be easy to present this thing live, but doing a live show, it's tough. I'd always love on tour, like your first two to three shows were just like dog shit. Like you come up being like, we did not rehearse enough, but by the end of tour, you're like full on doing it, and you want it to go on forever.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, again, like just to reiterate, you've had, so many of these very tangible experiences that you must carry with you, and like all of the work that you're doing now with the research that, I'm sure is informing your perspective on music from all of these different angles. I'm curious how it's coalesced, today, and if you were able to distill, like, say you were, to present uh, what you see the value of music in society via, the Center of Music Ecosystems, and in, like, if you were able to distill it like into a thesis, or like an abstract, like what would you say?
I don't know if I could do a clear abstract. I would say though that music fuels community would be my main very short thesis statement, and I think most of the things I do are driven by that thesis and driven by the idea of how can we create institutional structures around music that drive towards that goal of creating community, and by that I mean effective or emotional connections between human beings around music. And then I also mean like equitable communities and sustainable communities. So how can we make music benefit the people participating in it, creating it, or the people creating it and working in it and pushing it out to the world benefit from it more fairly and equally, and drive things like diversity, representation, and so for me, I'm like working at it from this policy end of institutional structures and making it better, which relates to Web3 and DAOs, and I worked on some of that stuff around water music for a while as well. But ultimately, the value of it is in those personal connections for me. The like community that's created around it. I come very much from the independent rock and roll world, I guess you would say, and then working on community initiatives. I'm on the board here for a local promoter producer that promotes experimental work called Debaser that are exceptional, and it's always driving towards that. How do we create more opportunities for people to make art that is interesting, effective, enjoyable for audiences, challenging, and ultimately brings people together around it, and that everyone who is around it then benefits in a fair way. So really just community to sum it up.
Totally, beautifully put. I mean, I think you supplied both a thesis and then turned it into an abstract. So, well done.
Amazing. Difficult on the spot a little, but I think it.
Nailed it. You nailed
Yeah.
it. Cool. Okay, let's turn to the Q&A portion of, this event. And to start, would love to hear how you discover music.
So my discovery currently, I would say, in the earlier 2000s, I was a blog guy. Like I was a Stereo Gum aficionado. I was a Said the Gramophone lover, who is this guy Sean Michaels from Montreal, who's now a really really well known author, but he was one of the first music blogs around, publishing to the internet. I was a mega blog guy, but more recently, I'd say my discovery comes from a lot of the communities I'm in. So like things like Crate Coalition, things like these for many different groups that I'm in, especially Catalog has a wonderful sort of record recommendation channel, and Water Music as well has a music recommendations channel, and I'm pretty like I try to put aside time specifically to engage with these things. It's easy to like have these things there and listen to the 15-second preview that when you click on it, and then be like, oh, that song's cool. But I try and you know, listen to the full song, and if I like it, I put it on. I have this sort of master playlist on my Spotify account. Like, it's just got days and days of music on it now, which is actually kind of obnoxious. Spotify, it won't add the songs to the top, so I drag each song up individually, which takes some time. But I have this master playlist that I use to organize all this incoming music. When I hear something I like or think I'll like, it immediately goes to this playlist. And so it becomes part of my rotation. And I use the playlist really as a like a jumping off point for the albums, or at least I try to. I'm still one of those album people. I want to try not engage with single songs so much as bodies of work. And so it really becomes this master playlist. So a lot of like just the communities I'm in are sharing music, and I take that very I don't want to say seriously, but kind of seriously. Like I trust that these people in these communities all have diverse tastes and styles that they're interested in, and have good taste, like objectively good taste, I think. And so the recommendations that come through are always fantastic, and I think it really broadens what I end up listening to. And then I still engage with blogs, you know, often. Like especially, I love Aquarium Drunkard. It's definitely like my top sort of blog music discovery. It hits everything from folk to you know, jazz and experimental to poster. Like, they're really pretty like genre agnostic and always highlighting interesting things. So a lot of my discovery comes from there as well. But yeah, those are the two like sort of main kind of places.
Yeah, no, that's great, and thank you for the reminder of Aquarium Drunkard. I used to go there like every single day, and I have totally dropped off. I need to go back, because I remember I discovered a lot of great music. I haven't been on there for probably 3 or 4 years. So
They have a fantastic podcast as well, where they what's his name, Jason Woodsbury. I might be getting it wrong. I think it's Woodsbury. He interviews artists basically every week. A new podcast comes out, and he's a great interviewer. Just really, really good stuff.
Oh, okay. Amazing. I'm gonna check that out. Noted. All right, next question. Three artists of note that you heard for the first time in the past year-ish.
Okay, so I've listened to some of these For the Records in the past, so I knew this was coming. I thought about it a little bit, so I'm not, you know, cruising through my Spotify ahead of time, or like during the show. So one I'd say is like a really recent discovery. Katie Kirby is the artist's name. They're an artist that is on Anti Records, and they have a new album coming out, but they released the first single called Cubic Zirconia, and it's lives in the like indie pop world, but I'd say they're one of those artists that you hear or at least I heard the song the first time, and it's immediately clear their gift for melody is like supremely special. And then, you know, went back and checked out their discography and confirmed like beautiful sort of indie pop song, but the melody is just really like playful and weaves around really nicely. It's not there's like a lot of indie pop music out there, and a lot of it is like pretty good, but not like you probably had this with artists where immediately you're, oh yeah, that's like that's the good shit. So yeah, Katie Kirby's one. Joe Rainey is another, and he is an artist from Minnesota. He's an indigenous artist and a powwow singer. And I learned of him from actually an event from this organization I'm on the board of, Debaser. They do these art parties quarterly called Peak, where they take over this art gallery and put on just a whole night of art and shows. And they brought in Joe Rainey for this. and it was just one of the best shows I've seen in the last couple of years. So he's a powwow singer accompanied by sort of an electronic producer who kind of weaves these like I don't want to say they're beats. There are some beats in them, but like very electronic soundscapes. And then while he's performing, he also has a tape recorder and he plays field recordings from powwows and historical events that are from his community. And all together, it just it was super moving and sort of like an emotional presentation. And his recordings are just as great. I dove into those following this show. He has a song called B.E. Sun, like B.E. Sun, that is just like out of this world good. It's a repeat track. And then third, I'd probably go with this guy Matthew Sage, who's an artist on RVNG, and he makes sort of ambient soundscape-based music. But what is notable to me is how organic sounding it is. Like, it's very lush. It doesn't feel like a guy who just plugged in his MIDI keyboards and created some soundscapes. And I know the ways that he records are he uses some acoustic instruments and guitar and sort of, I know it's still electronics, but he uses modular synths and weaves them all together, and so it kind of has this spacious very lush feeling to it. That is, I don't know, it's perfect. I like very much am in a phase of music. Maybe it's just where I'm at in my life, but I listen to a lot of soundscapey stuff, a lot of American primitive guitar inspired sort of stuff, or like new agey stuff. I think that stuff's just also coming into fashion, so I'm not leading the way or anything, but yeah.
Well, I mean, you're probably near the forefront.
Oh, maybe. Pat myself on the back a little.
Yeah. Cool, amazing. I'm gonna check all those out, especially Joe Rainey. You know, as a fellow Minnesotan, I
Oh yeah, Minnesotan.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Rainey, you're gonna love him, and he's like a really like pretty like proud Minnesotan too. So.
Oh, I mean, how could you not be?
Yeah. Mighty Ducks, man.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Next question for you. Most underappreciated artist from your favorite music decade?
I mean, the hard part to this question for me is favorite music decade more than most underappreciated. I'm gonna cheat a little. I'm gonna say the 70s is like a pretty like classic decade for me. Like, especially a lot of the sort of folk music around that time. The Nilssons and the Gordon Lightfoots of that area. I worked with Andy Shauf, who is in that sort of canon now. But for that, I would put forward Kate and Anna McGarrigle, who are sisters, Canadian, and I'd say they're like Canada's answer to the Roches, if you know the Roches.
Oh, nice.
Which is like just this beautiful like vocal harmonic folk music, very like a lot of like traditional like they'll perform traditionals and record them, as well as original songwriting, but like really gorgeous singing and harmonizing. So if people are fans of harmonies, this is where to go.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you. Got a lot of listening to do after this. And okay, now here's the big question. You're going to a desert island. You get to bring 3 records with you. What are they?
Oh yeah, forgot about this one. So I had on this list, I was thinking about Wilco, who are, I'll say, like, I think my all-time favorite songwriter artist is Jeff Tweedy and Wilco. So, and I might, for Wilco heads, well, I don't know. I think like for people who kind of know Wilco, they'd be like Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. But I am a Ghost is Born person, which is the record that follows Yankee Hotel Foxtrot. It's sort of like early mid 2000s, and it's just a really broad sort of ripper of an album that has it's got a bit of everything, and it's got them experimenting with krautrock. It's got sort of like piano ballads. It's got like weaving acoustic guitar songs. It's got like sort of Neil Young Crazy Horse kind of fuzz guitar breakdowns. So it really like gives a lot back, I think, and is like a constant return to record for me. The other one I would say is Oscar Peterson's Canadiana Suite. So for those who don't know, Oscar Peterson's famous Canadian jazz pianist. Like it's not right to call him dinner jazz, but it's like kind of like easy listening jazz a lot. But in the 60s, I think it is from the mid 60s, he recorded this suite of songs called Canadiana Suite that sort of take you on a tour across Canada. So starting on the East Coast and then working its way across with different tracks and some suites of songs in the middle. But it's all like really wonderfully melodic, beautiful stuff. On a desert island, I think I would need to try and stay pretty calm. And this is a record that I listen to a lot. You know, while I'm reading a book, while I'm drinking a tea and a coffee, while I'm relaxing. And then the third record, I don't know. It's really hard to like. It was really hard to nail down a third record.
Yeah, the third's always the most difficult because that's when you slam the door shut.
Yeah, really. I was thinking potentially a Bill Frisell record, Big Sur. This record that he recorded, he did a residency out in Big Sur, and it's a pretty quiet record, but it's got a lot of sort of strings, some like sort of fiddly sounds on it, and just this sort of gorgeous like soundscape that I think reflects what the landscape he wrote and composed it in. So yeah, I think I'd probably go with that. Otherwise, maybe like a Yo La Tango. Another like sort of band who's very impressionistic, can be soundscapey, but also can be very rock and roll. Like this record actually is like a more recent Yo La Tango record. There's a Riot going on. I think it's like the early 2010s, but it's got a lot of like of the more quiet jams. On Desert Island, I think I just want quiet jams. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it will behoove you to remain calm.
Yeah, totally. What are your Desert Island records, if I might flip the? I know that's not fair in an interview like this. It's a jerk thing to do.
It's fair. I mean, I sort of picked mine because you're not the first person to flip this on me, so I kind of have like 3 to 4 like relatively rote responses to this. But one of them is this album Acabo Shirare by Novos Baianos.
Oh yeah, you shared this a few weeks ago, and
I did, actually,
yeah,
the first share in the Crate Coalition. Yeah, I mean my partner is she's from Brazil, and introduced me to all of the wonderful things of Brazil, of which one of them is their culture on music, which is unbelievable. And this is just an album that I mean, A, is perfect for Desert Island, but B, is just supremely listenable, and it's just one of those that it's it's such incredible songwriting that it just doesn't get old. You can listen
Yeah.
to it. It makes grooves in your mind, but like you want that groove to continue to go through forever. You just never get tired of it.
I'm not an analog, recording purist at all, but there's also just something about these older recordings that is like magic. It captured
Yeah,
something in a room. The space is
totally.
like I don't know. I struggle with that because I don't want to be an analog like, oh, you need to use this super stupidly expensive equipment, but
Yeah,
you can hear it on records like that.
yeah, totally. Um, so that's one. And then um, sometimes I'll throw in Kind of Blue, Miles Davis, just
Yeah.
because it's just another one of those that's like I can never grow tired of. I think I need to update I need to rethink my top three because I've been saying the same thing for a long time.
I
But
mean, they're
my third,
timeless. It's good.
yeah, in my third that I typically would say is a Chroma Key Dreamcoat by Boards of Canada.
This
Like
was on my like,
totally.
when I was thinking about this, uh, just a calming record, but deeply like textured. There's always something new to find, but it also isn't like it's not menacing or something.
Hmm. Yeah, there's like a yeah, I guess they were called like IDM, intelligent dance music, for a while, which I
Yeah.
know is like a genre that people feel is a little too elitist, which I guess I agree, it makes sense. But there's something to that. Like there is a groove to it, kind of a beat. You can sort of you can sort of bop around the island while you still stay relatively calm, on alert for whatever predators that are
Yeah, it's funny.
out
All
there.
those Canadian like boards of Canada, like in boards of Canada and Caribou was called Manitoba, which
Oh
was a
yeah,
Canadian province early
yeah.
early on in the days. But I'm pretty. My like electronic tastes are not at all in the like sort of EDM. I'm definitely like regardless of the arguments over what to call things, definitely in that like I don't know, thoughtful electronic music. Maybe that sounds bad too, because other electronic music is not thoughtful.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Cool.
that's
Yeah.
a
And
good
then I guess,
list.
yeah, thanks. Thanks. I do. I would love to sit down and like spend a week on this,
Yeah,
just like
so, like
go through all the albums and like create a top 100 and then start to whittle it down from there. A top 100 would even be tough. Um, cool. Cool, Brodie. Thank you so much. I guess for people who are listening, where can people check out your work and the projects that you're doing and get involved
I
with
mean,
your
I'm
stuff?
on the Twitters and in the Crate Coalition Discord. I also have a
Mhm.
website. It's just my name.com. But I'm pretty proud of the work I've done with Water and Music, watermusic.com. That research group and that community is that Sherry has built there is really something special. I think, and the work they're doing is so thoughtful. And then
Mhm.
I'm pretty early into this new job, so none of the research I've worked on or reports that I'm working on uh, have come out yet. But keep an eye to Center for Music Ecosystems.com, and they also have socials. They're on Twitter and LinkedIn and all the places. And I think there will be some exciting work coming out there in the next couple months. I'm deep in
Cool.
the research rabbit hole and weeds right now, so I promise good stuff.
Cool. I can't wait to read it. Um, and yeah, sorry, one more question for you. Who else, comes to mind now that you've, been a guest on the show, you've done it for the record? Who else comes to mind as someone who we should invite to be a guest on For the Record.
Oh yeah. I just said Sherry from Water Music is an amazing leader of Water Music, but also I think has a deep is a music head, a deep love for music, especially of the electronic variety, and just a deep knowledge there. Also, Kat Bassett, who used to be the community manager at Water Music, amazing music head. Sarah LaRoe from the Water Music community is also into the classics, into the rock and roll. A lot of people from Water Music, honestly, really smart, thoughtful community of music listeners. So I'd go there.
Okay, noted. I will start to peruse the waters of Water Music.
Jump on in.
Cool. Thanks, Brodie. This has been really great. Thanks so much, for your time and your thoughts and your energy and all of the work that you do across all of the various music things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for all the work you do with Create Coalition, Gray Matter. You're right. As I've said to you before, your writing is, some of the most thoughtful and aesthetically pleasing and poetic writing on music and the music industry, which is sometimes a hard. I'm a pretty utilitarian writer myself, so I really appreciate someone like yourself who can navigate that divide of making industry topics emotional and tied to affect like you do. It's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I can't help myself. It's just it's the way I know how to write.
It's perfect. Never change.
Okay, noted. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, cool. Thanks again, Brodie. Thanks for being here, and you'll talk very soon.
Cool. Thanks. Talk soon.
All right, man. Take care.